Josie and the Pussycats 48. Josie turns Alex down and somehow thinks Alan speaks well of him. Alex must think he's smart because of his grades. Because it's not smart of him to waste time trying to get Josie to date him after the first time failed, like an idiot. Out of nowhere, he says he doesn't care much for Alexandra using her witchcraft, even though when he first discovered it, he was ecstatic and tried to take advantage of it with her. I guess he realized that it causes her and him nothing but trouble. So in that sense, he is smart by becoming genre savvy. But here, he's only being smart if this works out. So he asks her to hex Josie to go to the dance with him. It only counts as a hex because it embarrasses her later. He points out what she has to gain in it, and then he says he wants a spell that can't be broken by snapping fingers. Why does he think that's even possible with her? If it was, she would have tried that much earlier. That is such a stupid, glaring loophole that her ancestors should have seen. I guess too many cooks spoil the soup, so one of the witches that made her this way made this possible, from not caring if she abuses magic. She somehow thinks she could achieve this. He thanks her with his arm around her heartwarmingly, and she casts a spell that can't be broken. When Josie drops her notebook and her beam hits the wrong person, it somehow affects that person and ruins the story for him, making him get karma for asking for a love spell for way too long. I really wish this beam hitting the wrong person thing never happened again when it was an inexcusable plot hole the first time. She eventually tells her brother that she read the sorcerer's book, and the spell's gonna wear off in 12 hours. Oh, so that's why she's able to cast unbreakable spells. It's not that big of a deal. And I guess the idea is, she'll learn to never do it again because some spells are ones that she'd rather get broken. He doesn't want to stay up the tree because he'll miss dinner. So the story ends with him running away from the girl that he could ask Alexandra to shapeshift to look like Josie. Or alter his brain so that he thinks she looks like Josie. She's not questioning why she suddenly loves Alex, so maybe she wouldn't necessarily question that either. In the next story, Alexandra says she'll only drive Josie and her friends up to a lake if they rename their band. Let me guess, Alex will come to the rescue. She should have known they'd rather call the whole thing off. Alex thumps against the closet door and reveals he was tied up and gagged by her. He could have had a sleeping spell cast on him instead to avoid this. So she's an idiot. Why is she still smiling? After too long a time, they leave the house and she casts a spell to make him trip down the stairs. Some more time is wasted until their car leaves anyways, and she drives after them and casts a spell to drain his car of gas. He kept an extra gas tank just in case. I wish Sonic characters were this smart nowadays. Josie kisses his cheek, calling him a genius. He's lucky she didn't use magic to ruin the car directly. I guess she wants her magic to be subtle, not make witchcraft obvious, because she's not above much. She uses the spell to flatten his tires. They want to lift, and Alexandra makes a predictable excuse that she followed them to watch them perform as moral support. She offers him a ride, and somehow they agree to take her up on her offer, when they're willing to call the whole thing off. And they could easily lie that they're going to change the name and then not do it. Maybe they are lying. Eventually they get to their destination, and Alexandra shows up with a unique outfit to attract attention as a star. I wonder why she didn't just brainwash them to agree to this. Maybe it's because she'd find it unsatisfying, and she knows that. But that really needed to be explained from the start. Her brother puts tacks on her dress because it's so low to the floor, and she doesn't notice and uses magic wanting to make her act a sight to see. Because somehow, even though she's arrogant and got this outfit, she's smart enough to try to use magic to make sure she's the greatest thing that ever happened here, when I thought that was what zapping up her costume was for. You'd think that her spell would have kept her costume from ripping. It might as well have done nothing because her brother would put tacks on the floor anyways. She gets upset at her gown ripping and everyone laughs at her, getting her mad enough to punish Alex for it. The next story doesn't have magic in it, but at least Alexandra did something really nice for Josie in it, even if only because she thought she got rich. This issue is by Dick Malmgren. The first story is about punishing Alex with an abhorrent admirer because he wants his sister to cast a love spell on Josie. And somehow the beam works when it hits the wrong person. The only thing interesting about the cliche plot is that somehow Alex thinks she can cast spells that can't be broken with a finger snap. And she believes him and does so successfully. So it's a good thing it's explained that those spells all wear off in 12 hours. Which kind of explains why she's even able to cast unbreakable spells. Plus, they're probably assuming that she'll only cast an unbreakable spell once before learning her lesson. But it doesn't explain enough. I have to assume there were multiple witches involved in the process of giving her powers, and this idea was the idea of only one of them, and that witch didn't tell any others about it before implementing it. The second story is about Alexandra not wanting Josie to get to a gig with Alex's car. But while she eventually gets to drive them there, he uses tacks to ruin her dress and gets her to run away. Also, I guess they really did go back on their word and not rename their band, because they didn't really have to honor their word to her, because she still drove them here. Her being humiliated won't change anything. She should really give up on the name change after this then, because as the next issue will show, they can't even hold up their end of the bargain. If she's dumb enough to think they would, it's stupid of them not to lie to humor her whenever she offers them a favor. Josie and the Pussycats, 49. After Alexandra wastes time complaining about Alan leaving in a car with the band without her, Alex points out that she can't even sing, and she uses magic to warp to the front of the hotel they were headed for. She says she saved $2 she could have easily given to someone, so it's not a good thing that she can warp there. She lies to the guy at the desk that she's the advance agent for Josie. After some padding, Alex somehow assumes she used her father's jet to get here. And out of nowhere, it turns out there's a mad scientist formula that can slow down the speed of light. I'll just assume it's witchcraft instead. That's more believable for a 60s story. The guy says there's many uses for slow light, but doesn't explain any of them, so it seems useless. Why does he think it's a terrible weapon that needs to be guarded? He tells Alex to try to take the formula so that it can get hit by a hammer. That'd be illegal. This formula thing eats up a lot of the story. Melody takes the formula to ban the boys with, but doesn't get in trouble, thankfully. And Alexandra decides to get Josie in trouble by magically getting rid of the formula when they of all people are in charge of guarding it, as opposed to security guards. She switches the formula with the song they're about to rehearse. And somehow they end up getting playable music out of that, and it entertains people anyways, with none of them questioning why the song isn't something that they'd recognize. Who wrote their song then? It turns out there's some thieves that want the formula, and they waste too many panels boring us. We're told that one of the chords of the guitar is gonna short out the lights in the hotel somehow. The thief gets Josie's song and conveniently starts humming it, which attracts Valerie's attention. And after too many panels, Valerie says they shouldn't let the thieves know they're onto them. So she has a clever idea to sing in a subtle way to get the government man's attention directed at the plant the thieves are hiding around. Man, this story's boring. The government man does something clever by pretending he's on the floor looking for what he lost, just to get the thief to bend over, so that it can steal his formula. But the other thief gets the song back with a fishing rod he apparently brought. Speaking of smart. And Valerie's useful by taking one of the scientist's stuff from his kit and turning up her speaker, which records the thief's dialogue. Alexandra gets mad at Alan talking to Josie and casts a laughter spell. This beam hits the government man and somehow affects him instead, letting the thief get away. Alex should know better than to waste tons of time bragging. He slips, which punishes him for it. And Valerie's useful again, saying that she heard the thieves and they took the elevator upstairs. Josie spots some pigeons on the roof outside and tells Alan to get some popcorn from a vendor outside, which is conveniently selling it. I've never heard of popcorn being sold outdoors before. Alex gets to buy it instead, saving Alan some money, and he throws popcorn, causing the pigeons to attack the thieves, and their feathers clog their air vents, making them fall really far into a water fountain. And Alex gets attacked by birds, even though he doesn't deserve punishment for saving Alan money. Josie finally explains the mix-up to the professor, and Alexandra confesses with a smirk that she switched the pieces of paper in the first place. Because she cast that spell and felt like bragging about it, a man from a recording company wants to do business with a professor because he miraculously had a chemical formula that could be played as good music. Once again, we're very lucky that her magic worked out well for someone, but still, Josie and her friends sure are talented if they can all focus on singing those specific lyrics well and play instruments well. If they're all able to play instruments well and sing, I'm not really sure why they thought they needed Valerie, because just one of them would have been good enough then. This issue by Dick Malmgren was about a professor's useless-seeming scientific formula getting switched by Alexandra's magic with Josie's song, because she wants Josie in trouble when she was supposed to guard it, for some reason. But some thieves try to steal it and steal Josie's song. Somehow the formula makes good music too. The story thinks it's exciting with all of this focus on the formula and thieves, but I'm just really bored by how little focus it adds on magic. The part introducing the formula was the most boring part and only existed to stretch the story on for the whole issue. Still, I like seeing how the thieves got foiled, even if it seems unlikely that there's two impossibly smart mad scientists in one story here. Somehow, none of the girls realized the formula wasn't their song, when I thought one of them would have written the music sheet for it. Maybe Alex wrote their song. Because Alexandra admits that the formula was with Josie the whole time, a guy for a record company wants the professor to put lyrics to his formula, even though he's a professor, not a professional lyric maker. But people can be good at two things. Well, either way, he must have gotten money out of this, so she achieved some good with her magic. But again, it was nonsensical that it happened. Surprisingly, she doesn't use magic for a lot of issues after this. According to comics.org, this was the last story for many years to feature her powers, maybe because they weren't used in the cartoon, but they were reintroduced in the early 80s. I wish it was more specific. I had to jump ahead a lot of issues on the site to get to issue 104, where it finally mentions a story where she's an honorary witch again. Josie and the Pussycats 104. This is the first story in over a decade where Alexandra's an honorary witch. You'd think it'd re-explain the convoluted reason for why she has powers and Alex doesn't, instead of not caring if anyone's confused. And it wouldn't cause any harm because all they'd have to do is have one text box. Despite the fact that it's been dozens of issues since Alexandra was shown to use magic, Melody still warns her friends to watch out for Alexandra and her cats because there's something creepy about them. So it has to be that they've still been using magic and it was just off screen. Shockingly, even Melody's smart enough to figure out she's a witch. And it makes sense that someone who thinks differently than everyone else would think of this first, while everyone else refuses to believe it's because it's unscientific. And I'm proud of her for finally getting the hint, when earlier she complained about her being called a witch. But it's still very dumb of them when there's clearly no scientific explanation for Alex getting swept out of the house. Though that was the only time she was too obvious about magic to them. At least if I assumed that her having ice under the ladder because she was cold was just a cartoon thing, and not something that actually happened. And so it made sense in their universe. Josie thanks Alex for inviting them in. If he had dark blue hair, he'd look like Reggie. Alan couldn't come along today, when that was the only reason Alexandra invited them inside. So she drives to his house and casts a spell wanting to finish off the garage. He thinks the paint exploded and landed just where he wanted to. Wow, good thing she's got powers. She says she's on a roll, so I wonder if she'll fail later. Her next spell is a love spell on him. But somehow, her spell says, your heart's desire, and she doesn't realize that his heart's desire couldn't be her. So he had an overwhelming desire to see Josie instead of her. Apparently, she secretly knew that his desire was Josie and thought of her. But still, the spell is meant to make him love her. You would think her magic would know that. I would have given her credit for this as a good deed too, but you'd think if Alan liked Josie so much, he would have gone here, spell or no spell. Does Alexandra think her cat can read her mind? Why does she bother thinking and threats him otherwise? Eventually, there's another story with witchcraft called Tragic Magic. Alexandra offers to get Alan something to eat, which is nice of her, even if Josie beat her to the punch. Sheldon trips and his face lands in a pie, and the supposedly nice Alan laughs at and mocks him. At least apologizes. Alexandra plans to hex Josie to make Alan laugh at her, which would give him karma because his tendency to mock people to their faces would finally backfire. So I'm actually glad she hit Josie with the beam. Too bad he doesn't get the karma right away, and instead when she trips, he asks her if she's okay, because she's a girl that he likes and didn't land in a pie. Josie trips and kicks a pie into Alexandra's face. Josie apologizes for the karma and offers to get her water and paper towels. Sheldon relatably hates to see food wasted, and Josie trips on him and splashes Alexandra. She's right, that did clean her off. Then she slips on the water and hurts her head. Josie feels bad for her at least, and she smartly tells her to stay away, and undoes the spell. As usual, it's stupid that she says the spell out loud. She must be doing it in her head while they can't hear her, or they'd think she's crazy. But her lips still move, so they'd still think she's crazy for trying to talk without making noise. The story ends with a good result of her magic, as Alan tells Josie he's not letting her out of his sight for the rest of the afternoon. The first story by Kathy Carley was about Alexandra trying to get Alan in her house and magically painting his garage for him. Thankfully that doesn't backfire. Although she should have known better than to say her spell in that way, because it got him to want to be with Josie, which you'd think he'd have wanted anyways. It was enjoyable to see a story where she does nothing but good. The second story by Dick Malmgren has her see how mean Alan is to someone clumsy and make Josie clumsy. But sadly, instead of exposing him for the jerk he really is, he asks if she's okay, and not Sheldon, and Alexandra gets karma over and over. Then Alan says he won't let Josie out of his sight. Okay, but I didn't want a happy ending for him after how he acted towards Sheldon. And the writer should have known that.